Hello everyone. Today we're going to examine an IELTS writing assignment, which is an essay. We're going to look at what the actual assignment is. We're going to look at the content of the essay, the different mistakes that the student made. We're going to suggest corrections for those mistakes. And finally, we're going to look at the score and talk about why the student got that score. So let's look at what the writing assignment is. It is generally accepted that families are not as close as they used to be. Give some reasons why this change has happened and suggest how families could be brought closer together. So before we look at the essay, it's important to know that this first part here that says it is generally accepted that families are not as close as they used to be. This statement needs to be true for the student's essay. So even if you disagree with this statement, you need to write the essay assuming that this is true. So you need to agree with it for the essay. Okay? And then before we get into the actual essay, I just want to say that for IELTS essays, it's important to have at least 250 words. Okay, so let's look at what the student wrote. It is true that nowadays in many countries, families are not closer. So here you can find the first mistake with are not closer. This is incorrect, and it would be a lot better to say families are less close than in the past. Now, a student might want to write down, it is true that nowadays in many countries families are not as close as they used to be, basically mirroring the question, right? That's here, right? But you don't want to do that. You don't want to mirror the same language that's used in the question for what the essay needs to be, the topic of what the essay is. You want to basically say the same thing, but you want to use your own words. Okay? So, moving on. There are several reasons for this, and some steps can definitely be taken to make families closer again. So, the opening of this essay, content-wise, is really good. It asserts the claim that was made here at the beginning, that it's generally accepted that families are not as close as they used to be. It says it is true that nowadays in many countries families are less close than in the past, and then it says that there are several reasons for this, and then it says that steps can definitely be taken to make families closer again, which is this part, right? And if the student is able to explain the reasons and talk about the steps that can be taken, then the student is going to be on the right path to answering the essay question correctly. Okay, so moving on to the next paragraph. On the one hand, there are many reasons why families are not close like in the past. First of all, a recent sociological survey has shown that people tend to spend their time with their immediate family rather than their extended family because they are much happier there. Now, this mistake right here, it makes the distinction between the two types of families clear, the immediate and the extended. Before that, the student didn't write that. That wasn't in there. This is a correction that was written in. And this makes it a lot clearer to say, spend their time with their immediate family rather than their extended family because they are much happier there. Now, here is our second mistake of this sentence. And the correct answer would be with them. They are much happier with them, meaning their immediate family. Okay. The next sentence. Secondly, people are busy with their work and studies and do not have sufficient time to spend with their extended families. For example, I work 10 hours in the day and the rest of my time utilized for studying and learning new things. The first mistake in this sentence is in the day. You wouldn't say, I work 10 hours in the day. You would say, I work 10 hours a day. And the next mistake is, and the rest of my time utilized for. You wouldn't say utilize for. You would say, and the rest of my time I use for studying, or you would say, and the rest of my time I spend studying and learning new things. Let's continue. Hence, I cannot allocate time to meet my distant relatives. Finally, many people are not aware of their family trees and cannot make relationships with many of their relatives. So here you can see this mistake, and their family trees. You would not say and their family trees. People are not aware of all their family members, okay? This is the important thing to say, that they're not aware of their extended family, that they might know that they don't have a second cousin, or even cousins in general, or whatever that extended family might be. So many people are not aware of all their family members and cannot make relationships with many of their relatives. You would need to say, for this mistake right here of cannot, you would need to add a word like therefore, and therefore cannot make relationships with many of their relatives. Or you could say, and because of this, they cannot make relationships with many of the relatives. You need something that explains the why, and therefore cannot, okay? And also, I would just say, to make it a little bit better, instead of using the word make, I would say form. And therefore cannot form relationships with many of their relatives. So before I move on to the next paragraph, I just want to talk about the content of this paragraph that we just went over. The content is actually quite good because it talks about the reasons why families are not as close, right? And it says here in the question, give some reasons why this change has happened. And the student gives reasons like that people are busy with work and their studies, and that also people might not be aware of all their family members. So it definitely, this paragraph definitely goes back to the question of the essay well, and it answers an important point, which is giving reasons. Okay? So, moving on to the next paragraph. On the other hand, there are a few things which people can do in order to make their families larger again. Now, this mistake here, families larger, I think the student doesn't understand how to use this word larger, because it's not about making the family larger. Making the family larger would be to adopt more kids or to have more kids. So there's more people in the family. And that's not what the topic of this essay is. The topic of this essay is how to bring families together, or how to make them more cohesive. So it would make more sense to write here, there are a few things which people can do in order to make their extended families more cohesive again. Okay? Moving on. Firstly, if parents teach their children about their family tree, there's more of a chance that these children will try to keep relationships with all their relatives. So here we have this mistake with keep. You don't want to use the word keep. You want to use the word maintain. These children will try to maintain relationships with all their relatives. That makes a lot more sense. Moving on. Furthermore, people can try to have extended family gatherings at least once or twice a year, which will keep families close. The mistake here with keep keep families close is that if you just say which will keep families close, what you're saying is that having gatherings, family gatherings, will 100% keep families close. And that's not the case. It's not a surefire 100% way to keep families close. And that's why it's important to include the word help, which will help keep families close. Okay, moving on. For example, my friend's extended family gathers every year and celebrates New Year party together. This next sentence, you can find the first mistake with this word gathers. It's not gathers, it's gather. My friend's family gather every year, okay? Because we're talking about the family. So the family is they gather. Okay, they gather every year and they celebrate New Year together, not New Year party. Okay, my friend's extended family gather every year and celebrates New Year together. That's a lot better. Okay, these kinds of activities are essential to keep families close. So before moving on to the conclusion, I just want to say that the content of this paragraph is also really good because it talks about the different suggestions that can be made for how to bring families together, okay? And the student brings up educating the children about all the family members and trying to have family gatherings so people know each other and people are more in touch. Okay, and so the conclusion, the last part here is, in conclusion, currently families are mostly close-knit, but people can take a few actions to make it larger again. Again, the student makes this mistake with the word larger. And also, you wouldn't want to say that mostly families are close-knit because it doesn't support your argument. You actually want to say the opposite, that families aren't as close as they used to be. Okay? So this would be a lot better to say families are not as strong as they once were, but measures can be implemented to reverse this. And one more time, again, just going back, the student here is saying larger. This is incorrect. You wouldn't say that you want to make the family larger. You want to make it unified, cohesive, or bring the family together. So if we look at the total word count, the student wrote 259 words, which is great because the minimum needs to be 250 words. And the overall score given to the student is 6.5. And now we can go over why this score was given. For task response, the student would get a 7, which is a pretty good score. The student did answer the question correctly, and that's why a score of a 7 was given. The student went over all these the important points in the essay. Okay. The student gave reasons and also came up with suggestions of how families could be brought together. Okay, the coherence and cohesion, the student would get a score of a 6, and that's because some mistakes made it difficult for the reader to understand exactly what the author was talking about, what the student was talking about. Mistakes like larger that were repeated twice, it makes it difficult to understand exactly what's being said here. Lexical resources, the student would get a score of a 6. This is because there was just a few different vocabulary errors. And if there were less vocabulary errors, the student would definitely get a higher score. And then grammatical range and accuracy, the student would get a 7. And if you add all these points together and then divide it by 4, you would get the final score of 6.5. Okay, so thank you very much for watching this video, and tune in next time. Bye-bye.